Ken Tobin of HQ Tralee and Tralee Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Gerlach. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking today. In 2016, with my business partner Tom O'Leary, we set about funding and developing the first co-working hub in County Kerry and one of the first in the country. And as speakers have said today, there's now over 200 of these hubs around the country. Our hub was privately funded and is privately operated. Initially, in 2016, we opened with one building in Tralee Town Centre, which was a vacant property, a property that sat idle for over 9 years. The following year, we opened a second building within Tralee, and in 2018, in October, we opened the third building, this time in Listowel, which is a small town about 10-11 miles away from Tralee. Today, our hubs provide a home for almost 200 people that are working in Tralee and Listowel. We recognise the essential need within these towns, like many other towns around Ireland. In total, we've provided in excess of 15,000 square feet of shared offices, co-working, meeting rooms, community space, at a fraction of the cost of that of a hub in a larger city. All our hubs offer 1 gig broadband, that's 1,000 megabyte broadband connectivity, using a combination of a local internet service provider, and our Tralee hub is one of the Vodafone Cyro Gigabit Hub Initiative hubs. We house a huge range of individuals and companies within our hubs, the details of which are in my submission. I want to highlight a couple of key factors that we've learned through our involvement in the industry, being one of the first to do this in Ireland. You would have heard from previous speakers, not only today but also in recent sittings of this committee, that remote working, enabled broadband connectivity and supporting hubs are critical to reviving and sustaining rural and regional towns. My submission today is not about reiterating things that you've already heard, but demonstrating what has actually happened. One of the key things we've learned over the past few years is the importance of these hubs is not solely on the service it provides for the companies and remote workers, but in fact the economic and social benefit to the towns that they're based in. In the past 3 years, we've seen everyday examples of how a hub and supporting people to return to a town can actually benefit the local economy. And this is not just on a financial level, but it is worth noting that our hubs have an average salary of twice that of the local economy around us, which means twice the spend per person in the local town. On a human level, we've seen business owners and newly returned remote workers getting involved in supporting local tidy towns groups, chambers of commerce, sports clubs, charities and volunteer organisations. One of the main benefits of working from a regional town with low commute times and a better quality of life means that these people have more time to get involved in organisations and causes that matter to them. As these individuals typically have been used to a city commute and a longer working week, they have more time on their hands. And it isn't just the town that the hub is based in that benefits. Returning remote workers and SME business owners are opting to live in quieter villages and townlands near but not in the main town itself. Typically, the people we see returning are at the age that they are considering or have recently started a new family. And to a degree, the companies and remote workers we've supported in returning to Tralee and Listowel have returned back because they had a connection with that location, and because we had a hub, they were enabled to return. We have found it tough to attract back the younger graduates and the younger generation in their mid-20s. On a business level, there's two critical elements to providing this opportunity for regional and rural towns. The hubs actually support the growth not only of the businesses based within the hubs, but also the businesses within that town. And this isn't anecdotal, this is actually real. We see this every day ourselves. The businesses that we support are wide and varied, but being conscious of time constraints, I want to focus in on a couple of key items. Staff retention. Ask any employer of an SME in Dublin or Cork, in the technical sector, staff retention is one of the key things that is killing their business at the moment. This issue of not being able to hang on to good staff is being compounded by a number of key factors that this government has an element of control over. Quality staff are being hoovered up by the large multinationals, and invariably they're being lured away from our indigenous companies at an alarming rate. And while we all welcome the announcement of the next Facebook, Google or Salesforce entering the Dublin market, behind that there is a real concern that smaller companies will not be able to retain their skilled staff. Each big announcement also adds more pressure onto an already overheated housing market in our larger cities, forcing even more people to seek housing further and further out of the city, adding hours onto their daily commute. What the hubs in regional locations offer to these companies is an opportunity. And I can't stress this enough, we are selling ourselves very short if we pitch these regional locations as a compromise. In fact, these regional locations are a godsend to many SMEs. To give an example, we had one company join us a little over a year ago, primarily because the larger companies in Dublin were poaching their staff. Since coming down, this two-man operation has quickly grown to 7 people, and by the end of 2019 will have grown to 20 people, purely because they are able to retain their staff based in a regional town. To support staff retention and to echo previous speakers, these hubs present a major opportunity for large organisations in Dublin to retain their staff by allowing them to remote work and have a better quality of life. We have seen this ourselves, but larger companies need to be put under pressure to allow their staff to have this choice. As would have been mentioned earlier, all bar one of our existing remote workers pay for themselves. Their companies will not support them. While they say they will support them, they will not financially support them to relocate to a regional location. The second set of businesses that benefit from the hubs are actually those based in the hubs, not based in the hubs themselves. Those businesses are the local ones around the town, the shops, restaurants and pubs. When we opened our first hub in 2016, we knew that the street around our hub needed some support. Our first building in Tralee was a large vacant property. While a fantastic modern building, it lay idle for over 9 years and faced out onto a semi-derelict side street. So we developed a plan to promote the neighbouring shops, bars and restaurants and help them raise their footfall. We formed a community of businesses that worked together, which led us to take on privately funded regeneration projects for the street around us in Tralee. So much so, 2 new businesses opened up in that vacant street. Listowel, where we opened our latest hub, didn't need our support. You know, they're National Tidy Towns Award winners from 2018. Where they needed our support was on infrastructure. I think we put too much emphasis over the national broadband rollout. In the case of Listowel, we didn't have access to high-speed fibre. We were faced with a choice of operating off of a 70 meg broadband or do it ourselves. So we engaged with a local internet service provider and we did it ourselves. We invested into that company. We supported that company to provide 1 gig broadband to our building in Listowel, which is now actually available to the entire town. I mentioned earlier where we struggle is attracting the younger generation to our hubs. Through my work with Tralee Chamber Alliance, Tralee Chamber of Commerce and connecting with chambers all over the country, I know that Tralee and Listowel are not unlike many towns in regional Ireland. There has been a drain of talent and younger people over the past number of years, and a very visible cause and effect of this drain is the daytime vibrancy and the nightlife in these towns. We know our high streets are struggling, rural bars and nightclubs are in free fall, and our institutes of technology are fighting with the larger universities to attract students. And as the cities grow and expand, the younger generation are being lured and retained there. Kerry, for example, now has the oldest average age in the country, and the statistics show that we have a huge dip in the mid-20s age bracket. Just like after the collapse of the Celtic Tiger, when so many of our young people left Ireland, everyone cried foul for a lost generation. Today, the same thing is happening, only that they are immigrating from rural to a city location. When I started my submission, I said I wouldn't focus on items that other people have looked at already. So I want to finish with what we in business call the ask. And this is about connecting the dots and trying to see, can we do this in an accelerated, meaningful way. We've already mentioned that there's over 200 hubs around the country. More will be built, but what we need to do is increase the demand for companies and remote workers to go to these regional locations. And based on our experience, we see 2 very quick win items that can be done now. Firstly, we see an immediate need for a government-backed team supported by Enterprise Ireland, the LEOs and the local chambers of commerce, whose sole remit is to connect the SMEs in Dublin and Cork with the regional town hubs and remote work organisations. Utilising the industry connections of Enterprise Ireland and the on-the-ground connections of the local chambers, this team should have the sole function of providing a funnel of people and companies and remote workers who want to escape the larger cities to set up in regional locations. This team, and I think was mentioned earlier, should have the backing of a dedicated incentive programme to support these companies and remote workers in their relocation. There are numerous examples in the States and the continent of successful incentive programmes where relocation assistance packages are provided to enable remote workers and SMEs to move to regional locations. And these are done for a fraction of the cost currently being spent on other avenues to create jobs. Not only would this have the benefit of supporting these regional towns, but it would take the pressure off the larger cities. Secondly, and finally, we need support in our regional towns to attract back and retain younger generation and families. Without adequate funding to enhance the offering on the ground, younger workers will not consider these regional towns. Specific investment must be put into towns in order to increase their vibrancy and support the retail and service industries so that younger workers don't feel that they are compromising on the experience. locations must become more vibrant, and I would suggest utilising the framework for town centre renewal document. And my ask would be to legislate further to the establishment of funded teams to support these regional towns. Thank you for the opportunity, Carol.
Thanks very much, Mr. Tobin. I know I'm going to call on members as they've indicated, and Senator Pauli Coffey, I'm going to bring you in, Deputy Martin Kenny and Deputy Michael Collins, and that's the first round, and then I'll take another round after that. So, Senator Coffey.
Yeah, and first of all, I want to welcome all of the delegations that have come here this morning to share their experiences and, I suppose, to offer advice to us as policymakers, who, I suppose, on this committee our particular concern is regional Ireland and rural Ireland and how we can sustain livelihoods in those regions. I just want to put on the record too my acknowledgement for the work of Enterprise Ireland over the last number of years, where we now see that there's over 2.23 million people working in Ireland at the moment. That's the recorded figures for 2018, which is the highest ever. And you know, I'm very conscious of the work of the city and county LEOs as well, supporting entrepreneurs, supporting new businesses. Many of them who you know started in the face of a very harsh recession, and I think you know it was an amazing bounce back by amazing people supported by the state agencies and the LEOs, and I think we should always acknowledge that when we can. And I certainly want to do so here this morning. But there are new challenges now, you know, with the employment levels where they are. I think, you know, quality of life, smarter working, sustainability, these are the challenges now for Ireland. And I think we have a role, Chairman, in this committee to try and devise new policies to address the very issues that the delegations have raised here this morning. And I said it to some of them on the way in, often they're way ahead of the posse in terms of, we're often in a bubble here in Leinster House dealing with retrospective issues, which we have to do, but often the real vision comes from outside, and we're hearing it here today again, and I want to acknowledge that, especially with the likes of Abadou. We've had Grow Remote in here as well. People that have a vision for how our society should develop and where employment should go. And I think it can fit, certainly can fit, with the needs of modern families and work-life patterns. I was very interested to hear about the talent heat maps that have been carried out in Wexford, and I think before we do anything in terms of policy, of course you need to have evidence of where our assets are, where our resources are, and how we should best leverage those. And I think, you know, often the easy answers are right in front of our noses, and here we are in Wexford have shown the way in terms of mapping out the talent that's available to them if a business wants to establish itself, either in Wexford or in smarter hubs or whatever. And I think it's a good starting point for anyone. And I take on board your recommendation that we should have a national talent map, and I think we should, Chairman. Recently I was in discussions with a company that are looking at establishing in the South East in the financial services area, and we met with IDA representatives, and the first thing they said was, we'll have to do a skills analysis for the South East. And I had a bit of an argument with them, because I said most of our graduates, unfortunately, have left the South East. They're either in Dublin or elsewhere. And I said that skills analysis shouldn't just be in the South East, it should be all over the world, in fact, because people want to move home. And I was delighted to hear Vanessa actually repeat it here again this morning. So there's a mindset in officialdom in our, and I do acknowledge the great work IDA are doing, but they more or less box off regions, and they look at regions where the talent in that region is presently. Whereas I believe they must have a far more outward-looking view. And yes, most people, and I'm only using the South East because I'm from the South East, I'm from Waterford, and it is one of the unemployment black spots in the country. It is one of the areas where we've suffered most brain drain, where our graduates unfortunately qualify in Waterford, but unfortunately leave the region, and that happens right around the country. And I've often compared Dublin to the economic vortex that's sucking in our best resources. So we need to think of new ways to try and get those brains and get those graduates and get those life, as Ken has said, back into the regions. And I certainly welcome the very positive outlook that has been presented to us here this morning. And it's not just an outlook, there's actually real solutions being presented here. I visited Boxworks, you might know